Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My Two Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. I am G2. This is the episode where I talk about everything that happens in the world of professional wrestling, whether it comes from the world of WWE, AEW, or TNA Wrestling. This episode's pretty much, I believe, is going to be short as I'm recording this now, because as I've gone through what happened this week, it was a pretty easy week, pretty digestible week on every show that happened on television for WWE, AEW, and TNA. So don't expect a long episode. But yeah, let's start off with TNA first and foremost. TNA, you had first and foremost Mike Santana going against Casey Navarro, who had AJ Francis out there with him. Santana would defeat Casey Navarro with spin the block. You would have, what else? Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz, the Rascals, defeating the team of Alan Angels and Jake Chris. This is the first time both Alan Angels and Jake Chris have been back on TNA. I want to say Alan Angels since the either middle of the year or the beginning of the year. Jake Chris, I want to say since probably last year. Anyway, they did not get the win over the Rascals. The Rascals would defeat them. You will have a 6-man tag of the Northern Armory, which is Josh Alexander, Judas Icarus, and Travis Williams, defeating the team of Eric Young, Steve Macklin, and Jonathan Gresham. You will have Joe Hendry defeating the brother of Nick Nemeth, Ryan Nemeth, and that was the whole story of this thing, because Joe Hendry is trying to get a shot back at the TNA World Championship, and Ryan Nemeth is the brother of Nick, so he's just trying to poke little holes at Nick until ultimately he gets back at the TNA World title. So he defeats Ryan Nemeth, and this wouldn't be the last time that we see Joe Hendry in the night, but I'll get to that in the main event. We would have Rosemary defeating a Jada Stone, and then we would get to the System being gifted championship rings. It seems like that's the new thing going around in professional wrestling. I mean, AEW did that first with the AEW Dynamite Diamond Ring for MJF, who's never lost that ring. Again, that's something that I kind of have a little sour taste in my mouth. I wish Ricky Starks would have won that, last year? But I digress. You had, Liv Morgan, Cody Rhodes becoming the Crown Jewel champions. And originally they were supposed to get championship belts, but they had to hand them off to Triple H, so now they got championship rings. So there's another set, and now with TNA having the System being gifted their own set of championship rings, it just seems that rings are now being the thing in professional wrestling. So that was just something that I needed to point it out there. Getting to the main event, the TNA World Champion Nick Nemeth defeats Brian Myers, who's part of the System, thanks to Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry would eliminate Alicia Edwards towards the end of the match, and this allowed Nick Nemeth to hit the super kick and then the danger zone onto Brian Myers to win the match. After the match was over, Eddie Edwards would try to come in and attack Nick. This will lead to Joe Hendry coming out with a kendo stick, hitting both Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards with it, and it looks like he's about to swing on Nick because he thinks that's another member of the System, but he stops himself. Nick will look at Joe Hendry and look like he's about to super kick him because he looks like Joe's about to hit with the Singapore cane, or the kendo stick, excuse me. So you had those both men stop at one another and look at each other. And it's still a tense moment because the whole Nick being the TNA World Champion, Joe Hendry getting screwed out of Bound for Glory, and Joe still trying to get his shot back at that TNA World title. So again, it's real sketchy with the trust level factors of Nick and Joe Hendry, and it's still going to be probably built more on that as the weeks goes on. But that was your TNA Wrestling highlights of the week of this week. Also, before I get off of that, that was on the TNA television portion. A little backstage news that happened this week from TNA. It appears that Mike Bailey, Speedball Mike Bailey, has now been freed from his TNA contract. I mean, they reported that Mike Bailey's contract with TNA has expired and he's a free agent, and they're believing that Mike Bailey might be jumping over to AEW, which I believe that might be the better place for him to go, because I think WWE in general, I mean, it's a bigger company, but the style of which Mike Bailey works. I mean, Mike Bailey can work a WWE style. He can work an AEW style, but I think true Mike Bailey style, the way that he works, if you saw his work in TNA, I think it works better with the AEW style. I think it works better with the Will Ospreys, the Ricochets, hell, even the John Moxleys, if you put them in there with him. Even a Kenny Omega when he comes back from doing his stuff in Japan. I think Mike Bailey's being over in AEW will put Mike Bailey on a bigger stage than he was in TNA, obviously, but I just think that him going to AEW first before he makes the leap to WWE, if he decides to, I think that makes better sense for him than just to try to jump to WWE now, if I want to be honest. And I'm not saying that Shawn Michaels couldn't do something good with Mike Bailey over there at NXT, but again, if you look at people Mike Bailey's style, you'll see that he works better with AEW. So if he is going to AEW, I think that's great for him, but only time will tell. Now, again, with that said, that is your TNA Wrestling Highlights of the Week. And now let's move over into AEW. AEW Dynamite this week was pretty simple, pretty easy to digest once again. We had both Roderick Strong and Adam Cole trying to go for their third win in a row. You had Roderick Strong going against Lance Archer, and Roderick Strong would defeat Lance Archer. They had, I believe, whether it was a no holds barred or falls count anywhere. Nope, it was falls count anywhere matchup. And Roddy would defeat Lance. So Roddy's already getting his match with MJF at Full Gear. After that, we had Adam Cole going against Konosuke Takeshita. And Takeshita would end the streak of Adam Cole that he was having at the time. Because Adam Cole already had 2 wins. He won against Buddy Matthews, and he won against Malachi Black last week. If he would have defeated Konosuke Takeshita here, he would have went directly to Full Gear, and it would have been a triple threat match. But it seems right now it's Roddy and MJF. And the reason how Takeshita would win was because he used the Dynamite Diamond Ring that MJF lent to Don Callis last week so he can get the job done to make sure Adam Cole wouldn't face him. So they get the job done. Right now we're seeing that Roderick will be going against MJF. I have a feeling that Adam Cole still might try to get the third win, possibly, if he works a Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. I mean, it'll be a great story for them trying to run with Adam Cole just being so hell-bent on trying to get that match with MJF at Full Gear so he can be a triple threat. I would love to see them try to run that, but if they don't, I would love to see Adam Cole just try to talk to Roddy to try to give up his match with MJF at Full Gear to him. I would like to see them try to do that because I want to see a desperate Adam Cole trying to get his hands on MJF. I do. I would love to see that. I mean, because if you look at it this way, if they would have did the triple threat match with Adam Cole, Roddy, and MJF, we would have saw ultimately Adam and Roddy facing off against one another because they both want to beat the ever-loving crap out of MJF, but somebody has to get the win at the end of the day. And they know that deep down, whoever wins that match against MJF, beats him, if you will more than likely get a shot at the AEW World title next. Because even though people hate MJF, you got to remember MJF is a former AEW World Champion. He's the longest reigning AEW World Champion, and beating him kind of puts you in that top echelon of being the next guy up for the AEW World title. So it's going to be a real fun dynamic to see how they really pull this together with Adam Cole, because I would like to see him again be desperate, try to get that shot with MJF, try to see if either A, they run the gauntlet with MJF literally being on Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage, like with there being like one more week for Full Gear. I would like to see them try that. Or if not, next week on Dynamite, he tries to grab that title opportunity, try to have Roddy like hand it over to him, and Roddy just like tells him no. But we'll wait and see with that. But at the time of right now, we do know Roddy will be facing off against MJF at Full Gear. Also on the card, we had Jay White and Juice Robinson facing off against Hangman Adam Page and Christian Cage. Hangman and Christian Cage would win because of Kip Sabian interfering on behalf of Christian when he would hit, I want to say it was Juice Robinson in the head with Christian Cage's clipboard that gives him the right to challenge for the AEW World Title at any time. The referee was distracted at this point, I believe, with Mama Wayne being on the apron. This allowed Kip to hit Juice, and then you would see, I believe, Hangman hit the dead eye onto Juice Robinson to get the win for his team. We had Shane Strickland going against Leo Rush, and Swerve Strickland, better known as his AEW name, would defeat Leo Rush in their match. After the match was over, Swerve will call for Bobby to come out because he wants to get some type of retribution for what Bobby did to him 2 weeks ago. Bobby MVP will come out, and this was all a setup for Shelton Benjamin to attack Swerve from behind. He does this. Bobby gets in the ring, and now it's a 2-on-1 beatdown. MVP puts Nana in the chokehold as Nana has to watch as Swerve gets beat down and then get put in the full Nelson submission hold, or better known as the Hurt Lock. And Nana just watches he passes out because MVP's choking him out with a cane as well. Now, they did do a nice, interesting camera shot. I believe when Shelton Benjamin grabbed Nana up and threw him outside of the ring, you saw Leo Rush standing over by the barricade, and he does absolutely nothing. He literally stands there and watch as the Hurt Syndicate do what they did to Swerve and Nana. Now, I think that's a future shadowing of Leo Rush probably joining the Hurt Syndicate, because Leo does have a previous partnership, a previous business dealing with Bobby Lashley from their time in WWE, and their their partnership was so favorable amongst the fans. People hated Leo. People loved to boo Leo Rush, but people at least admired what Leo was doing with Bobby. People liked what Leo was doing with Bobby, what Bobby was doing with Leo Rush. So I could see them putting Leo in with the Hurt Syndicate, and that'll be great as well. But time will tell. And I still think with Swerve and Bobby having their match at Full Gear, I think we still might see the return of Keith Lee somehow, some way. I still think that. I think probably at World's End we could get a tag matchup of Swerve and Keith Lee, who they'll probably try to build up as a mystery partner, going against Bobby and Shelton, or Bobby and their fourth guy that they're going to ultimately bring into the Hurt Syndicate. But again, we'll wait and see as that's down the line. But up next is Full Gear, Swerve, Bobby, and we'll see how that goes. We had Dr. Britt Baker going against Penelope Ford. Britt Baker will win that match. This is the first time Britt has been back on AEW Dynamite television in a little bit of time. And so she had won her match. After the match was over, you saw Serena Deeb come out on the stage, and it seems that they're setting up Britt Baker and Serena Deeb. I'm cool. I mean, as long as you get more women on the card to wrestle, and it can lead them either to facing off for the AEW World Title in the future or the AEW TBS Championship in the future, I'm cool. So having Britt and Serena Deeb doing that, that's fine with me. We had Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay have a promo battle in the ring, which sets up their match at Full Gear. I'm cool with this. I mean, Kyle Fletcher was able to stand his own against Will Ospreay. Will told an emotional story of his whenever he was at home with his boy, watching Kyle shave his head after Kyle gave him the Tiger Driver, and he couldn't feel his son touching his hand. And Will Ospreay mentioned that, talking about how it was going to be so sweet to beat the crap out of Kyle Fletcher at Full Gear because of that moment, because you took something away from Will. You took that moment away from him where his son was trying to tap him on his hand, and he couldn't feel that. So that's pretty emotional for Will Ospreay there. Long story less long, we end up getting to a brawl with that too. Kyle Fletcher has Lance Archer, Brian Cage come out on his side. Will has Powerhouse Hobbs and Mark Davis on his side. And we still get that nice little moment of what's Mark Davis going to do, because you get Powerhouse taking out Brian Cage, two former members of Team Taz going against one another. I do like that they constantly will have that moment with one another. And you had Mark Davis dealing with Lance Archer, and Lance Archer's down. Will Ospreay's dealing with Kyle Fletcher, and you see Kyle backing up into Mark, and Mark backing up into Kyle, and they look at one another, and you see that they're just yelling at one another. Both former teammates of Aussie Open, and you see Will just blast Kyle Fletcher out of the ring, and Mark Davis looks at Will like, you gotta be kidding me, bro. Yo, you need to chill. And you see Will just tell Mark, deal with Lance. And they don't show this on television, but they do a nice little, I believe, Twitter video of Mark Davis leaving the arena, Will Ospreay chasing after him, and Will says, you're able to throw hands with Archer, throw hands with Cage, but you're not able to do it with Kyle. You need to pick a side, mate. And Mark Davis basically tells him, yo, this is all your fault. You were the first person to start working with Don Callis. You came over here and started doing all of this. When I went down, you were supposed to look at the Kyle and look at it. You didn't. You failed. You didn't look at the Kyle. Look where he's turned to now. So you can already see the wheels turning of Mark Davis putting the guilt on Will Ospreay. And I think ultimately in the end, I think we might still see Mark Davis teaming up with Kyle Fletcher. I understand they want to do Kyle as a singles competitor guy because they see something in Kyle, and I think everyone sees something in Kyle. But I think having Aussie Open click back together, or if not clicking back together, Mark Davis being like the manager but a wrestler to Kyle whenever they want to do tag matches. Cool, we'll do Aussie Open together. But when you want to do a singles competitor match and you have Kyle be like the center focal point, Mark Davis could be his second by ringside, like that type of deal. I think you're going to do that because I don't see where we're going to see Will Ospreay and Mark Davis being like the unit, the team, as they're going against the Don Callis family. I just don't. Because Kyle Fletcher, he has a deeper connection with Mark Davis than Will Ospreay does. So I think they need to play onto that personally. But again, time will tell, as they do with AEW here. In the main event, we had another tag team qualifying matchup where we had the House of Black, which was represented by Malachi Black and Brody King, going against FTR, where the winners will be put into the Fatal 4-Way AEW Tag Team Championship matchup at Full Gear. Already we have Private Party, who's the tag champions. We have the Outrunners, who defeated Top Flight on Collision. And in this match, we have House of Black beating FTR. So now House of Black have been added to that Fatal 4-Way matchup at Full Gear for the AEW World Tag Team titles. I'm not mad at this. I think if FTR would have won, everybody would have complained and say, oh my God, they're wasting Malachi Black. They're wasting Brody King. I think people are tired of seeing FTR kind of being in that championship role position for the AEW Tag Team titles. So for them to not be in this spot, not be in this Fatal 4-Way matchup, people are happy about that. I think it's time for FTR to turn into a heel tag team. I think it's time for them in 2025 to get back to what made them one of the best tag teams in the world, being a team that doesn't care about the people. Yeah, you can have people cheer for you, but you just don't acknowledge them. You acknowledge the people that's hating you more than the people that loves you. I think they need to do that on television because FTR, they've been a good guy tag team, I want to say, for the last, God, this is going on 2 years now. I want to say since 2022. Yeah, because that's whenever they were being like the tag team that was collecting all tag team belts from New Japan, Ring of Honor, AEW and even AAA. They were just the tag team good guy team. And I think that they need to go back to being the heel, the bad guy team, the team that people hate, team that people will say, okay, they're a good tag team, but boy, do we hate them. FTR needs to go back to that. And I sense that FTR knows that too. So in 2025, I think they're going to ride that wave and see that. And I think that them being one of the teams that really to make Private Party feel legitimate, I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to be a team to probably congratulate Private Party for winning the Fatal 4-Way matchup at Full Gear and probably crack them in the head with the tag titles or crack them in the head with a champagne bottle or something. I think that needs to be the situation for them to, again, revitalize them and get themselves back on the course that we all see FTR to be down the line. But again, them losing to House of Black, good thing. House of Black gets to do something. They get to be on pay-per-view, so that's great. Is there anything else I'm missing from Dynamite? We had the usual Jon Moxley and his crew coming down there to cause wreckage, to mess up shop. Orange Cassidy comes out there. He stops it from happening. So, again, they're still building with that. I will say one thing with that. When you had Orange Cassidy and his crew come out there to stop Jon Moxley and his crew, there was a little thing that Orange Cassidy said. Orange Cassidy would challenge Yuta to a match next week because he has strong ties with Yuta, because he's the guy that trained Yuta, brought Yuta into AEW and Circa so much. And he mentioned how Yuta, unbeknownst to him, is being used as a pawn. And as he's saying this, Yuta is yelling at Cassidy, saying, I'm not being used as a pawn. And you see Claudio standing next to Yuta, and Claudio will tell Yuta straight up, shut up, Yuta. And Yuta will shut up and look at Claudio just mean mugging, and then look back at Orange Cassidy. I still think that we're going to have Yuta be the guy that gets kicked out of the Death Riders. I think they're going to replace him with Jack Perry. I think Jack Perry fits that mold better than Yuta. I understand that they want to keep Yuta now in this position because he has the ties with Moxley, ties with Claudio for the whole Black Combat Club stuff. Cool, fine. But we're in the part where Moxley's talking about how he wants to change AEW, get people to no longer be happy-go-lucky, but to be serious and reach their full potential. What other young superstar has been on that path this whole year? I would say Jack Perry. Whether you love him, you hate him, you gotta admit, he has changed up his character. He makes the people hate him. Certain people love him, but he is willing to go through what he needs to go through, whether it be pain, whether it be the harassment, whatever it is, to make sure that AEW becomes top notch the way that it was when it first started out. Think about it. Right now, he's feuding with Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia is getting the better of Jack Perry at every turn, constantly yanking him up by the chest, putting him up against the wall, talking to him. And what does Jack Perry do? He plays a little mind games with Daniel Garcia. And Daniel Garcia just be left standing there like flabbergasted, and Jack Perry just always walks away with a smile. That's something that Jon Moxley does to people. Jon Moxley is able to use brute force, but he's able to use his words to leave people perplexed. So I think, again, Jack Perry works more in that younger guy role than Yuta does. So I can't wait for the day they switch out Yuta to put Jack Perry in that position. But yeah, that was just a little something that I found amusing whenever they had Orange Cassidy and his crew come out there to, again, ward off Jon Moxley and his crew from taking over AEW. I believe that's everything that happened on Dynamite. Now let's move over to WWE. We start off with NXT. NXT was they're starting their Iron Survivor qualifying matches this week. And we have Sol Ruka going against Cora Jade. Sol Ruka will win that. So she's qualified for the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. You had Javon Evans going against Lexis King. Javon will win his qualifying match. You had Wes Lee going against Cedric Alexander. Wes will win his qualifying match. So now you got two guys advancing for the Men's Iron Survivor matchup. And you got Sol Ruka, the only woman so far, advancing for the Women's Iron Survivor matchup. You had Julia and Stephanie Vacour going against Slash Legend and Jakara Jackson. Stephanie and Julia will win that matchup. After the match was over, they get interviewed, and they talk about how it might come down to those two facing off against one another in the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. And we all know what's going to happen. We all know those two are going to be put into it, and they say they can't wait for that challenge to happen, and then you have a stare down between the two. I think that's great because Julia and Stephanie, ever since Stephanie, I want to say, has been in NXT. We've seen her majority in tag matches. Same thing with Julia. Julia, I believe, only had two NXT singles matches. It was her against Chelsea Green, and then her against Roxanne Perez on the debut episode of NXT OCW. Those have been her only singles matches on NXT, I believe. Stephanie, she's only had one, probably two singles matches, but all other times than that, you could count that Julia and Stephanie have been teaming constantly, religiously. So I think they're trying to make them a team that if they want to go after the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, they could do that there. But them being added to the Women's Iron Survivors Challenge, everybody kind of could see that happening there. Also, we had Andre Chase, Trick Williams, and Ridge Holland in the middle of the ring. Ridge is talking about how he wants the NXT Championship matchup because he pinned Trick Williams last week in Philadelphia. Andre Chase would say that he wants to get his hands on Ridge Holland and even puts Chase U on the line. Ridge would say he doesn't care about Chase U. He doesn't care about all of that. Trick Williams would interject and say, all right, we'll do this. Next week, Ridge Holland versus Andre Chase. Winner gets me at Deadline. Ridge would say, okay, I'm cool with that, but I also want Chase U. I want Chase U to be done if I defeat Andre Chase next week. Andre Chase would agree, so we get that match set up for next week. Andre Chase going against Ridge Holland. Winner gets Trick Williams at Deadline, and also if Andre Chase loses, Chase U is more likely done. I think they're more likely to go that way. If they don't go that way, I can see them using Duke Hudson and Thea Hale to cheat on behalf of Andre Chase without Andre Chase knowing, or with Andre Chase knowing and he won't like it, and he'll probably try to send them both away, and ultimately might cause him to lose his match against Ridge Holland. But in the end, they can go either way with this, but I really will think they'll go with Ridge Holland, to be completely honest. I mean, I would like to see them do the story of Andre Chase going against Trick Williams, because it'll be a nice little fun throwback for the people that's been watching NXT for a long period of time, especially whenever NXT got turned from the black and gold super indie era to the NXT 2.0, where they literally started from scratch once again. And at the time, you had Andre Chase doing the whole Chase U thing, and everybody thought it was so hokey and cartoony and gimmicky. When you had Trick Williams first coming up on NXT, and he was the sidekick for Carmelo Hayes. And now look at it, where we're at now. Trick Williams being the man for NXT, holding NXT championship. Andre Chase showing everyone that he is a credible wrestler, because people don't know about his independent wrestling career. That's one. And two, people actually caring about Chase U, that actually being one of the top gimmick storylines they've had in NXT for some time now. So again, it would be a nice little tip of the cap for the fans, and also tip of the cap for the characters of Andre Chase and Trick Williams if they get that opportunity at Deadline as well. But we'll wait and see. For me, I would love for them to do Andre Chase and Trick, but I think they're just going to go with Ridge. But I hope to God I am truly wrong in that. I really do. We had Adriana Rizzo going against Nikita Lyons. Nikita would win that, but after the match was over, Rizzo would hit Nikita in the back with the crowbar, because you got to remember, Rizzo was tagged by Nikita Lyons weeks ago, and Rizzo never forgot about that. So had that moment happen. And then we had what? We're trying to figure out who's the next tag team to face off against Nathan Frazier and Axiom for the tag team titles. And we had, after the main event of the Women's North American Championship being defended, with Fallon defending her title against Kalani Jordan, and Fallon retaining the title because of fatal influence, interference in the match. You had all the tag teams just basically just going stupid and brawling one another to end NXT. So that was NXT this week. Again, really digestible, real easy to see, and not really much to really go into deep depth. And now we move over to the main roster of the WWE. I'm gonna say this. I'm just gonna get to the main general stuff that happened. Raw. We continue on with the New Day potentially breakup, because you had Kofi going against Pete Dunne. Kofi got in this match because he was sticking up for R-Truth backstage. Woods would tell Kofi, don't do it, don't get into this situation, and Kofi wouldn't try to hear Woods out, saying, nope, I need to do this for R-Truth because he's my friend and this is what friends do. So we get to that. Woods would help out Kofi towards the end of the match whenever Pete Dunne got sent outside of the ring, and Woods would hit Pete with a clothesline. Woods would yell at Kofi would yell at Woods, excuse me. And Woods would yell at Kofi, say, hey, you need to worry about the match. You need to worry about getting in there. I'm helping you. You know, that's a concept of friends helping friends out. Kofi would just constantly berate Woods, say, I told you, don't interfere. Let me do this on my own. Ultimately, it backfires on Kofi for not getting at Pete Dunne after Woods laid him out. Pete Dunne will recover, hit Kofi with the better end, get the win 1, 2, 3, and this will still continue to those two still arguing one another back and forth. And again, we're leading up to the 10-year anniversary of the New Day being a team together, and it's still crazy to hear anybody say that. New Day being around for 10 years. I think that's literally one of the longest tenured of a stable trio team, I don't care what you want to call it, in the WWE, of at least this modern era. This is the longest run that we've ever seen for a good period of time. So I still think they're setting up for something big whenever they do that whole 10-year anniversary, because you're going to have Woods, you can have E, you can have Kofi there. And whether it be Woods turning on Kofi and E, or it'll be Kofi turning on Woods and E, or it could be the big shock to everyone. Big E announces that he's able to get back in the ring. Everyone's happy. And you just see E just beats the dog crap out of Kofi and Woods. Think about it. Because E can say, this is tough love. You guys are literally tarnishing the New Day and I'm not around. So why not me just kill it? I'll kill it all. So again, that could be something. But again, we'll wait and see as the 10-year anniversary of the New Day comes around. You had the Wyatts and the Final Testament having their face-off in the ring. This happens because Miz is backstage. He was kidnapped by the Wyatts a couple weeks ago. Final Testament sees him. Final Testament wants the Miz to tell them where the Wyatts are. Miz tells him he has no idea where they are. You need to let that go because they let me go. Cross isn't trying to hear that. He has AOP, the Authors of Pain, grab up Miz, take him to the ring. They take him there. Cross asks Miz again, where's the Wyatts? The lights will cut off, pop back on, Wyatts are in the ring. And this was all a setup. Miz is not in the ring. Miz comes back in the ring with a chair. He hits Eric Rowan in the back. Final Testament gets the jump on the Wyatts, starts beating them down. They lay the Wyatts out, and Final Testament with the Miz would leave the ring, and Uncle Howdy would lean up on the ropes and start laughing maniacally, and Final Testament doesn't see it, but Cross does. Cross would stop out of the stage and just look at Uncle Howdy as Howdy's laughing. So we're still getting that. We're building more of the Final Testament and Wyatts feud, and I'm happy about that, because at first it seemed that they were going to do that collision path, but then they made like a little turn to say we were never going after the Final Testament, we were always going after you, Miz. And now we jump right back to gang on gang warfare. And I'm happy about that, because again, Final Testament, I feel they're a team or a stable that has potential, but it seems that the ball never ever gets in their court. But it seems now they actually have the ball in their court to do something, especially with stable like the Wyatts. So we'll see how that goes when time comes about with that, and let's see how they actually continue on with the story with that. Continuing on with Monday Night Raw, what else happened on the show? I want to say that we are still continuing on with, I want to say, Judgment Day stuff, because you had Dominic Mysterio and Finn, like they were about to get into something, because you had, Dominic getting antagonized by Finn for not winning the Fatal 4-Way number one contenders matchup for the World Heavyweight Championship last week. Dom would get at Finn and say, yeah, I almost won it, but I didn't have my family around. Where was everybody? And Finn would say, hey, we were listening to Liv, and Liv said for us to stay back and let you handle it. And again, Finn just pokes at Dom for not getting the job done, and Dom would just poke back at Finn saying, I've beaten Damian Priest. I've done something that you haven't been able to do. And you get Finn just almost getting in the face of Dom, and you get the whole Judgment Day coming to break up Dom and Finn between one another. And you get Finn basically now poking and egging at Dom, saying, okay, well, since we're talking about family here, how about you do something for me as a family? How about you and Carlito go against the Viking Raiders? No, the War Raiders, excuse me, because that's their new name. Oh no, they're reverting back to their old name, excuse me, from NXT. You go against the War Raiders next week on Raw. How about you lighten the load for us there, okay? Dom, being arrogant, will say, okay, I'll talk to Adam Pearce to get that match made official. So they had that match set up for next week. We had Damian Priest have his face-to-face with Gunther. And Gunther is now not the same strong ring general Gunther that we had before. He is now looking more timid. He's looking more not sure of himself. Priest will call that out in the whole promo battle with him and Gunther. And he actually made Gunther look like a child for real, to the point that Ludwig Kaiser had to come out there and basically stick up for Gunther. And Gunther would cover Kaiser's mouth and say, don't talk. And then Kaiser would have to get off, tell Gunther to get off of him and say, no, I'm going to talk. He can't speak to you like this. And that's when you see Priest just pop Kaiser in the mouth. And you see Gunther standing there. He looks like he wants to jump and try to do something, but Priest is daring him. Come on, do something. Do something. And he doesn't. Which sets up a match with Kaiser and Priest later in the night. And Priest would beat Kaiser. So again, this is giving and showing us that Gunther is now vulnerable. We have seen what Sammy was talking about. We've seen that Gunther, whenever he loses, he's bleed. He can bleed. It's that old thing. It's that old fable or the old story. The man's undefeated. He's untouchable. But whenever you see him bleed, you realize, oh snap, he's human. He actually can be defeated. And if that's what's happening with Gunther, all that bravado, all that brash and braggadociousness that he's had ever since he got to the main roster, but every single time that he loses, it starts really ticking at him. When he lost to Sammy at WrestleMania, that ticked. When he lost to Cody, that took a big tick. And you just start seeing again the braggadociousness of him starts dropping and dropping. And now here we are with Gunther literally looking vulnerable, more vulnerable than we ever seen him. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes as we lead up to Survivor Series, because as Survivor Series has been announced, that Gunther will be defending his World Heavyweight title against Damian Priest there. Now we go to the big, all-encompassing War Game matches that's more than likely going to be confirmed. We get to the first one. I'm going to start with the female one, because it seems that we got on the heel side, the women's side, is going to be Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, Candice LeRae, Raquel Rodriguez, and Liv Morgan, because on Monday Night Raw, you had the women's tag team titles being defended, of Jade and Bianca defending the titles against Liv and Raquel. In the main event, you had Tiffany come out there to distract Jade and Bianca, but then you had Naomi come out there to stop Tiffany there. And then ultimately in the end, Bianca and Jade retain tag titles. After the match is over, Nia Jax comes out, attacks Jade and Bianca from behind. Naomi will try to do something, but again, Nia's just too strong. Nia would take out Naomi. Then you see Io come running down. Io comes down. Io makes the save, and now it's a 4-on-4 type of situation, but the good guys, which is Io, Jade, Bianca, and Naomi, would stand tall to close out Monday Night Raw. Then we go over to SmackDown. Naomi, she has her opportunity to become WWE Women's Champion over there to go against Nia Jax. And she doesn't get that championship. She loses thanks to Candice LeRae and Tiffany Stratton interfering, but she did have Bayley come out there to try to help. Bayley, again, would try to help, but again, the numbers were just too much. Bianca and Jay, they were taken out backstage by Liv and Raquel. That's the reason why they weren't out there to save their girl Naomi. But Naomi did put up a hell of a fight against Nia. I will say, go and try to watch that match on SmackDown. Great match, main event of SmackDown, but Naomi did not win that title. Nia Jax is still your women's world champion. Or women's champion, excuse me, because the women's world champion is Liv Morgan. Nia is still your women's champion. Just a little spoiler here. They taped the next episode of Monday Night Raw this past Monday, and Rhea Ripley, she's back. Rhea Ripley comes back with a face mask, and it seems that Rhea is going to be on the team of the good guy side for the women. It seems that it might be Bianca, Jade, Naomi, Rhea, and it could be either Io or Bayley. It's going to be one of those two, because on SmackDown, Bayley kind of set it up to Naomi saying, hey, don't trust Io, because remember, there's kind of a trust issue between Bayley and Io since the whole damage control turned on Bayley at the beginning of the year deal. So she kind of gave Naomi that warning. I might say we might get a match between the two to see who's going to be the fifth member of the women's War Games team for the good guy side. But most definitely, the female villain side for the War Games, it will be Tiffany Stratton, Candice LeRae, Nia Jax, Raquel, and Liv. So the women's War Game match has been set, but they haven't officially announced it, but you can expect it to be announced next week. Going over to the men, the Bloodline Civil War. We got Tama Tonga Loa, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed is their fifth guy, because on Monday Night Raw, you would see Sammy, Jimmy, and Jay trying to recruit people all throughout the night. They try to recruit Seth. Seth tells them, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not helping Roman out. I will rather stomp his face in, not doing any of that. You see Solo and his crew try to recruit Seth later in the night. Seth says no to them as well, especially because he doesn't want to team with a knockoff Roman Reigns and Solo there. So you get that being said. And on SmackDown, you get the two teams facing off against one another. Team original bloodline of Roman, the Usos, and Sammy going against the team of the new bloodline, Solo, Tama, Tonga Loa, and Jacob Fatu. And as they're doing war or brawling one another, Bronson Reed would appear and he would just smash Roman right in the corner. And we already know he's the fifth guy, because again, as I said, they tape Raw on the next episode of Raw for this upcoming week. They already taped it. They already had spoilers out online. And people saw where Bronson Reed's supposed to be facing off against Seth on Monday Night Raw. You see Solo out there and he helps Bronson Reed. So I like that they already preempts it. They are not playing dumb to the people. We're just throwing out the fifth guy right now on SmackDown. So when you do see Raw, it makes sense for why Solo is there and he helped Bronson out on Monday Night Raw. So we kind of already beat the quote-unquote spoilers there, and when you see Raw, it makes sense. So I'm glad that they did that on SmackDown. After the beatdown was over, you saw Jay looking at Roman, and he tells Roman point blank, hey, you need to make the call. Make the call. And once SmackDown was over, you see Roman in his chair, beat up. He grabs his phone. He tells his phone to call the wise man. And the phone has been disconnected. That's Paul Heyman doesn't have that number no more. Or he's not accepting calls from Roman Reigns at this time. And Roman is just so shocked that he lets his phone drop out of his hands. Because you got to remember, Roman Reigns is nothing without his wise man. You've seen it since he's come back from WrestleMania. Yes, he has the pops. Yes, he's able to do a couple things in the ring. But he's not able to fully strategize his whole moves because he doesn't have the wise man. The wise man has always been the guy to put everything together, put the plan together, and have Roman execute it. And if there was any type of trouble, Paul Heyman, the wise man, was able to fix it, all that type of stuff. We haven't seen Paul literally since the Solo and his crew of the New Bloodline took him out. I want to say probably June, July, maybe. So we haven't seen Paul since then. And you got to remember, even before then, Paul mentioned, as Solo was making the announcement saying that he talked to Roman here and there, that Paul never talked to Roman ever since WrestleMania. So you got to remember, the strain on their relationship has probably went extremely fragile and probably shattered. And now with Roman being at his lowest point, and he tries to call Paul, and Paul doesn't have that phone no more, or he's not accepting the call from Roman no more, it's going to be real interesting when Paul Heyman pops back up. That's what I'm going to say with that. So I'm liking what they're continuously doing with the men's war game side and telling that story, how they're building that up. So that's your two war game stuff. One more thing before I head out of here. On SmackDown as well, they have started the women's United States Championship tournament. We had Bayley going against Candice and B-Fab in a triple threat match. Bayley won that. Next week, we'll have Bianca Belair, Chelsea Green, and Blair Davenport in the match, and the winner will advance to face Bayley. Out of that, I see what? Since we got Bayley, who's a good guy, we're going to have a villain because we're not giving Bianca and Bayley on free TV like that. They're probably going to build that up for more anticipation. I say we probably do Chelsea Green, because Chelsea Green is a nice character. People like Chelsea's character work, so I say we give Chelsea that spot right there. So I think Chelsea's going to beat Bianca and Blair Davenport next week and be advancing in that tournament. More competitors in the tournament. On the other side of the bracket, you have Jade Cargill, Mia Yim, and Piper Niven in a match set up. And then you also have Naomi, Tiffany Stratton, and Elektra Lopez set up in a match also in that tournament as well. So there's that. And the finalists, they'll be facing off against one another at Saturday night's main event for the crown of the United States Women's Championship. So they started that up on SmackDown, and we're going to continue to see how that continues to shape up as the rest of the SmackDowns keep going in the weeks to come. I believe that's everything of importance that happened on the main roster of WWE, and I believe that's it. Again, as I said, this was not going to be a long episode. It's shorter by, I believe, 20 to 30 minutes than what I usually do. Because, again, everything this week was real digestible, real easy to see. And, yeah, I don't want to waste no more of your time here. So, with that, this has been your Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My 2 Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. He is I, and I'm him. I want everyone to have a great Saturday, great rest of your day. You'll hear from me again tomorrow when I talk about things in the news that happened this week and recap some of the big topics here. So again, with that being said, I love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye now.
I'm ready for war.